Is that better in one? You're live.
Okay, we're live now? Okay. 5, 4, 3. There's no countdown. All right, Shabbat Shalom, everyone. All right. Okay, so this is our special Shavuot weekend leading into Shavuot on Monday. And so, no, listen, I bet Agnes was excited about that. Okay. and so we're going to do things a little different than we do. We have a few extra special things, and one of them is this morning's Midrash. Okay. So this is the way this is going to work. So for the next hour and 15 minutes to an hour and a half, we're going to be in here. We're going to open up the floor to questions. I'm going to start off with a little small mini sermon. I've got a little thought I want to share with you. If I had time, I guess he didn't want me to do it that way, so he didn't give me the time. So if I had had the time, I might have turned it into a whole sermon, but I think we'll get a good 10 or 15 minutes out of this, and you'll understand what I'm talking about. I think it's something of value. Now, of course, if you were on the Zone meeting last night, you already heard this, because it was something that was inspired for me to share last night, but I think it'd be worth hearing it again. Okay? So we'll do that, but I just want to make sure before we get started, as we always do when we get together, is if there's any urgencies prayer-wise that need to be taken care of, we'll just want to take care of those first. So if anybody has an urgency, you can raise your hand and we'll bring you a mic. Ben's got his hand up, okay? So Billy, come and grab the HH2 over here. And oh, you got one, okay. Bring that one to him then.
I just want to lift up Greg and Karen. They've been sick now for over a week and a half, and I got word that Greg was not doing well at all last night. He was having extreme difficulty breathing and heart palpitations, so I just want to lift them up and pray that they'll recover quickly.
Okay, certainly we can do that. And I've got to praise. I ran into Michael and Alicia GT yesterday, and Michael's looking much better. They're hoping that they may get to be here at some point either today or Monday. So they send their greetings. I almost wanted to tease Michael for being on the same diet program I was on when I was sick, because he was looking rather thin. But he was walking around pretty good and looked in good spirits, and certainly Alicia did as well. So keep them in prayer. I'm hoping my father will be coming home today from the hospital. I don't know if that's going to be the case, but I know I mentioned a while back that he had what may have looked like symptoms of a stroke. They don't know. When they brought him in, they still don't know if he had one or not. It might have been a very small, slight, mini stroke, that kind of thing. But now they found that his white count's a little bit high and his oxygen was a little bit low, so they're working on whatever that is. But he should be coming home hopefully today. Rabbi Tom, it looks like he's doing fantastic. Of course, yeah. Of course, as you can imagine, having your type of surgery he had, that he's in some pain and that kind of thing, but that's all normal, but he's doing well. And he's also expecting to be coming home, possibly tomorrow. And so, and then we may get to see him at some point next week. Now, preemptively, just let me remind you in advance, and I'll remind you all the way until he does show up. Okay, he would like it to just be clear, and please don't be offended, this is nothing personal, but he would like it if everybody would just give him space, because he's going to be somewhat fragile from the surgery, okay? And except for a very few exceptions in the leadership, he really would like you to greet him at a little bit of a distance. Not so much for the social distancing, but because he doesn't want you to come up and grab a hold of him, all right? Because, the surgery he had, he's going to need to heal up and that kind of thing. So you can walk up to him and we'll have, that kind of work out. We'll figure out the protocols for that. But he also doesn't want to be overwhelmed with all these people just coming up to him and that kind of thing. So let's give him some space, and we'll give you the more specific protocols as we get closer. But just be excited at a small distance. How's that? Okay, for him. And he'll be very happy to give you all of that kind of hugs and everything else when he fully recovers. All right, that'll be fine. Okay, anybody else with anything urgent? Okay, anybody on live stream? Okay, Kurt?
I just have a couple. Paula Mickard is pray for my daughter Nicole with her mental illness and a rehabilitation in her new apartment. And we have a Claire Isaac. Please pray for my health. And then they got, says her name is Gail. Please pray, Abba, to intervene with my daughter who has relapsed back into drug and alcohol abuse. And that's it for urgent.
Okay. I don't know. I'm going to put out a prayer request, but I don't know if this is urgent or not. But it's for the people that it involves, it's probably urgent. I want us to pray, and also, I say pray, especially for yourselves, on how much you respond to things in an assumptive way, like you make assumptions and jump to conclusions and get all negatively affected, and then you go right to Facebook. Why did I not say like 1,000 times that you don't post when you're in a negative place? Okay, that's not a real rule, but you understand? That was a guidance that was given. Okay, you should never be posting or responding to someone's post when you are in a negatively charged emotional space, because you are not likely to say things that you probably should. Okay. So, but I also want to pray, and this is more the urgent thing, that you are guarding yourself to how much you allow that kind of thing to affect you. And you can affect you in two ways. Either you could be upset with what the person did, or you could be influenced and agree with them. Instead of understanding that you're only hearing an angry person or an upset person's, frustrated person's post. And so let's be careful. This is like a rampant pandemic in the body. It's really a very highly contagious, if you're in a negative emotional place, social distance. You know what that means? Don't post in the social media. We're going to have emotional social distancing. If you are suffering emotionally, stop posting. All right? And lastly, stop being a coward. Okay? If you have a problem with somebody, don't attack them sideways in public. Go deal with them. And if you're not going to deal with them, then that is your way of dealing with it. Then accept that that was your choice, and then still don't post it. Either you're going to deal with it or not deal with it. It's like when people come to me and they counsel and they have an issue, whatever that issue is. I say, look, you only have two choices. You deal with it or you don't deal with it. But whining about it's not an available choice. Either deal with it or decide I'm just not going to, and I'm just going to let it go. Then let it go. But I want us to pray because this has been going on forever. Paul talks about it. He says that I hear there's divisions among you, and it shouldn't be. And it shouldn't. But why are there divisions? Because people's feelings are hurt, and they want to split everybody up over them. But they're not trying to split people up. They just want people to agree with them, which effectively splits people up. I'm mad at him or I'm mad at her, and I need you to agree with me so you're mad at him or her too. All of you, if you do interact with people doing this, your first thing you should be saying is, have you talked to them? Whoever this is that you're upset about? Because they may not even tell you who it is. They'll do it very sideways, in a way that's pretty obvious to the people that they want to make sure know who they're talking about. And by the way, this isn't only about people with the ministry attacking us in some way. You guys do it to each other plenty. All right? So it's that kind of thing. And I'm not just talking about on social media either. You do this when you're hanging out at an oneg or when you're sitting at somebody's house or you're just, texting each other privately and you want to tear people down. And this should not be so. Okay? This should not be so. So, as we go into Shavuot, okay? And I'm going to throw out my little 10-minute thing, and then we'll pray because it's I think it's something we should be praying about. Let's understand what Shavuot is, okay? On a mechanical side, it's an agricultural event, right? Because you had the first fruits wave sheaf during the time frame of unleavened bread, and then you have the counting of 50 days to the full harvest, to the bigger harvest, okay? Because you have this bigger harvest that happens towards the end of the spring into the summer almost. So that's the mechanics of it. But what is it for us? Well, it's two things, right? Two major events happened. I mean, lots of other ones I'm sure too, but two major events happened on Shavuot. Okay? The Mount Sinai event and the Upper Room event. So you have Acts chapter 2 and Exodus 20 all happening at the same time, kind of on the same time frame. Now, for you and me, and this fits into what I was just talking about, we should be understanding that those two events were about what? What was happening in both events? Something from the above was being sent and delivered and offered to the below. Can we agree? Right? The above, the heavenly, the spiritual, was making contact with the below, the fleshly, the earthly, and conveying something. In the Exodus event, it was conveying the commandments, the Torah. In the Acts event, it was conveying the Ruach and the launching of the congregation or the assembly after the death, burial, and resurrection of Yeshua. But it was something from the above being conveyed to the below. Yes? Okay. So then we, in the below, in the earth, in the flesh, our role in all of this is being ready to receive. Because if you read the Exodus story, if you read the book of Acts, you will know that not everybody was ready, and so not everybody received. There were people that were there that certainly could have received who didn't. Or they received through their filters, so they really didn't understand what they were receiving. Okay? So I want to encourage us that as we prepare for Monday, for Shavuot, and this kind of ties into the parable of the sower of the seed. What kind of ground are you to prepare to receive the sowing from the above? Because that brings it back to that agricultural model, right? That uses agriculture for this particular thing specifically. Uses it for lots of things too, but the Shavuot is definitely an agricultural event. And so as he wants to sow into us, what we need to do on our part is make sure that we're actually tilling our ground, getting out all the roots and all the other stuff that would make it hard to plant and to grow. And that includes mostly our emotional challenges. Our self-sovereign challenges, well, I don't like that, or that's not fair, and that's not right, and I don't understand why you did that, and I don't think you should have done this, and I'm mad at you, and all this stuff. How can the above be planted and grow in that? It can't. All right? And so, and again, I was thinking of doing this as part of the message for later, but that's all I have to say. It's only like 10 minutes. But as a matter of fact, I could just say those 10 minutes and we could end there and you'd have enough to go home and work on. Okay? Sometimes the message doesn't have to be long to be what you need to hear. And it's really the above, which wants a relationship with you. The Father and the Son want a relationship with you, and they choose appointed times as special events to convey what they want you to understand in developing that relationship. Not that they don't do it every day on some level, but these are special appointed times to meet with them and receive. And are you ready for that? Are you prepared to receive whatever they have for you? And that's really your job, to make sure that you're the type of ground that's ready to handle whatever they're going to give you. Now, when I say that you need to be ready to receive revelation from above, let's not go all Pentecostal or Christian or something and think we're talking about some sort of personal revelation from above. That's not what we're talking about. So I don't want everybody saying, oh, I got a word and I got a revelation. That's not what I'm talking about. That's not what happened in Acts, and it's not what happened in Exodus. So in Exodus, the above spoke to the people through Moshe, the anointed, appointed. In Exodus, that was the way that the information was conveyed. In the book of Acts, the Ruach, the above, spoke to the people through the anointed, appointed apostles. And by the way, not all of them. It was only a few that was given the opportunity. Specifically, Peter stood up and really made, a powerful message for them. And so let's follow the pattern of Scripture and understand that that's the pattern of Scripture. So you should be not only ready to receive, but are you ready to receive from whoever he chooses to deliver whatever that is? And let's stop thinking that it's always going to be, as most of the Hebrew roots, Messianics, especially coming out of the charismatic side, believe it's going to be this sort of personal revelation direct from Yeshua to you. Now, don't get me wrong. It's going to be very personal and very much direct from Yeshua, but through somebody else's mouth, okay, through the anointed, appointed's mouth. Can we agree about this? That's what we see, all right? That's exactly what we see in Exodus and in Acts. Nothing different. Now, oh, yes, well, the Ruach came and fell on all, yes, and so then they were, now, bear in mind, they, the apostles, started prophesying or speaking the word with authority. They started saying it in the languages that the people were around them all spoke. The miracle was a hearing miracle so they could all understand, because after all, if the above wants to give you something and send you something, it should be in a form you can understand. And so it's going to be put in that kind of a format, in a language you understand. And so, and notice that nobody needed an interpretation. Each one heard it very clearly and understood it very clearly in their own language. And so I want us to really be thinking about, as we come to all of the appointed times, it's going to be the same type of thing. When you come on Saturdays, on Shabbat, when you come on a Tuesday night for Torah study, are you coming with your ground, you, ready to receive whatever that is? And by the way, it may be encouragement. Some of you are terrible at that. You cannot receive encouragement. I mean, it's bad enough you can't receive correction, but you can't receive encouragement either. You can do this. No, I can't. I'm awful. I'm dying. It's no good. You know, as a joke last night, and I said this, as a joke last night, during the meal, at one point, when we were putting dessert out, Bob was calling up people in strange ways. Like he said, everybody under this height, go get your dessert. Or everybody over this age, go get your dessert. And finally, when everybody pretty much had gone, he said, everybody with a pretty smile, get up. And you know what? Like 2 people got up. So I grabbed the mic and I said, everybody with low self-esteem, get up. Half the room got up and then walked over. Because I figure if you're not going to think everybody should think they have a pretty smile, why wouldn't you get up? Because that was his point, was that meant everybody could now go, right? But we have trouble believing that we have a pretty smile, or that we're worth anything, or that we have any value, and our self-esteem is very low. Our feeling of self-worth is very low. So the above, through an anointed person, may try to lift you up and encourage you, but are you even ready to receive that? And the answer is a lot of times no. And then, of course, the other side of that coin is you should come ready to receive correction. And we all know we're terrible at that. Nobody likes to be corrected. As a matter of fact, shockingly, Scripture says that nobody likes to be corrected. It literally says that nobody enjoys correction while it's happening. There's a brilliant revelation. And I'm not picking on the revelation coming from above, but sometimes he has to point out the blatantly obvious to us. But what the rest of it is, but if you will receive it, it brings the peaceable fruit. But only if you receive what the above sent you, and it may have been correction. And if you read your scriptures, there's a lot of correction. I mean, we just read in the last Torah portion or two from the book of Leviticus, he says, look, if you don't listen, I'm going to curse you 7 times. That's pretty strong correction. And if that doesn't work, 7 times more. And if that doesn't work, 7 times more. And he didn't say, I'm just going to come over and give you a little slap on the wrist. He said, I'm going to curse you. Why is that the case? I'm not even talking about why we are terrible at receiving it. Why does he keep needing to do it? Because we're stubborn, stiff-necked, self-sovereign creatures in the below. And in order to be connected to the above, the Creator sent us His Son to show us how to do this. And what did Yeshua do? He demonstrated 100% compliance and submission to the Father.
I only do what he says. The words that come out of my mouth are his words. And we have a real hard time getting to that place, okay? So as we open up into this discussion, we'll start off with prayer for all of these things. You know, certainly you can ask any question about, you know, the scriptures and that kind of thing, but also I want you to think about what you may want to talk about in terms of what I just threw out there. Because I think this is part of why we still struggle, not with the mechanics, but with the internal part of becoming like him. I really don't see people struggling that much with the mechanics. The only mechanic I see us struggling with is the one that's most emotionally charged. Which commandment is most emotionally charged? The money one. People struggle with the tithing. You know, we asked for a registration fee for this event. Of course, we're not charging for you to come to services. You can come to services today or Monday, and we wouldn't charge for that. But we do have things that are expenses. But you know what? If you were doing your second tithe, which means you were doing your first tithe, you wouldn't even have a thought of having a problem for the small amount that we asked for. The only people whining and complaining about it aren't tithing. Because for them, now they're taking money out of their pocket. It's my money I have to spend now. See, when second tithe, it wasn't your money to begin with. He gave it to you to do these things. So you're very happy to have something to use it for. Go enjoy the feast. But you guys, and I think you need to talk to each other. Find somebody that's tithing. Don't find someone who's whining like you are. Find someone who's actually tithing and ask them their experience, and you will be shocked. Not shocked because it's shocking, because you're thinking it's just me telling you. You need to hear them tell you how their lives and their finances were turned around and corrected and fixed by tithing. Okay? Go talk to somebody who was broke, couldn't do anything, started getting this thing worked out, and things turned around. And hear that. Because you don't believe that. That's why you're not doing it, because you're broke and don't believe that. I've been broke, and I tithed when I was broke. And it made a difference. And by the way, I wasn't tithing when I first was broke, and then I realized I needed to be doing what I needed to be doing. Because everybody has the natural thought of, I'm broke, I can't do things. Well, if you don't start doing them, you'll stay broke. Well, that doesn't make any sense. That's because you're thinking in the below, not the above. Stop thinking down here with the earthly thoughts and fleshly thoughts. Of course it doesn't make any sense. Because it requires intervention and blessing from above for your obedience. And so just because you can't see what he's going to do doesn't mean that he's not going to do it. It means that it takes emunah. You have to believe. You have to have faith. It's so funny because all you came out of Christianity where everything was about having faith. And now you have none. I don't know if you did when you were there either, but I'm just saying certainly you come here and you act like you don't have any. And it makes no sense. And some of you tithed like machines when you were in the Christian churches, and now all of a sudden the money's gone. And you're not hurting me. Well, what we're doing here, he'll send it from somebody else. The only person you're hurting is you. We have no struggles financially here. So don't think 1 second that this is one of those ministries trying to get money out of your pocket. We're not trying to do any of that sort. And what I'm trying to do is minimize all the whining I have to deal with when you guys contact us, which you 50-50 whether you do or not. Some of you guys just whine and not contact us because you don't want to admit that you're not dealing with your problem correctly. But we're not ready to receive the correction. So you're suffering financially. Part of that's your correction for not handling money correctly. Not just with the tithing, but just, you know, I watch all these quote-unquote broke people. They have no problem eating in restaurants, no problem buying gifts for people, no problem going on vacations and staying in hotels, and they're broke. At least that's what they say. They don't act like broke people. Broke people don't have cell phones, if you're really broke. Broke people don't go on vacations. Broke people don't have cable and internet. Broke people, Oh, but you guys have all, broke people don't go to Starbucks or some other place getting coffee 5 times a week. But you say you're broke. See, you mean I can't spend money every which way I want to, so I'm broke. I can't get everything I want when I want it, so I'm broke. You find a way. Listen, Billy can tell you, the other ministry people can tell you that when we counsel you guys, it's amazing how somehow when it's what you want, you have enough money for it. If you want it, you find a way to get it. But why don't you want what he wants more than that? And trust that if you do it his way, you'll have abundance overflowing. Okay? Abundance overflowing. But Rabbi, we had enough trouble in the church with 1 tithe. Now you're telling us to do 3. I'm not telling you anything. He is. Are you not receiving it from the above? I'm just an instrument for the sound to come out with his words. All right? It's all here in the book. I'm not making anything up. You know it's in here. But we struggle. And the part of it has to do with going back to where I started, which is you're not good ground. You're just not good ground yet. You want to think you are. You read that parable and think, oh, I'm good ground, and I'm going to yield 100-fold and 1,000-fold. And no, what's going to happen is when he says, and lets things happen to you in a corrective way, you're going to fold. Forget about 1,000-fold. You're just going to fold. Most of you got that joke, but all right. And so if you've ever played cards, you know what I mean when I say fold. You're just going to throw in your cards and quit. Okay? And you're thinking you're going to yield all this like abundant 100-fold, 10-fold, 50-fold, whatever. No, you're just going to fold. Because you're not trusting and your ground is no good. You're going to have to work on it. And why is your ground no good? Because it's filled with a bunch of stuff that has to be tilled out of your ground. You got rocks, you got weeds, you got roots, you got all kinds of junk in your ground. No, that sounds like a lot of work, Rabbi, yeah? Where did he ever say it was going to be all easy? Oh, I know in church they told you that, but I mean, where does the book actually tell you that? It's going to be all so easy. Yeshua says, you're going to follow me. You're going to have to deal with your stuff. He says, my Father works, so do I, so will you. And it doesn't just mean have a job. I mean, you're going to have to work on you. That's a big work. Amen? All right. So let's go ahead and open up here. Open up within 32 minutes. Okay, let's open up. Father, we come before you, and we want to lift up all the prayer requests that were given, as well as the prayer I gave. It was a long prayer, that we as a body, as a people, in the below, in the flesh here, on the earth, can truly till and work on our ground to be that good ground that is ready to receive what you want to share with those of us here from where you are in the above, in the heavenlies, in the spiritual. So that, Father, that we can use that interaction as part of our changing, our transformation from what we are into what you are. So that, Father, that we can fulfill our purpose in existing, which is to go from receptacle to giver, as we change from the receiver of all that you have to then taking that and having it be a conduit to flow outward as we become more and more transformed into the image of Yeshua. So, Father, help us to deal with the internal side of this that makes the mechanical side so hard, that makes all of our interactions, especially interacting with each other. The loving you part, hard enough. The loving each other, almost impossible, because we have these challenges. And so, Father, we just want to thank you that you are merciful, that you are compassionate, that you are infinitely patient, and that you love us and are ready for us when we are finally ready, so that you can give us what you have for us so we can receive it. So, Father, we want to thank you and ask now that you would guide and lead all things as we have this study today, as we come together in the authority and the name of Yeshua our Messiah. Amen. 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 Okay, so that's your Shavuot message right there. So if anybody talks to you later who didn't get to see the Midrash and they missed the Midrash, well, you can send them to that at least first 30 minutes. Because I think this is our biggest struggle. Okay, so if you've got a comment or question about what I just said or anything at all, we're going to just have an open Midrash discussion here. We're going to have people walk up here and line up. We have a microphone. You can bring your Bible. There's a little music stand you can lean your papers on. It'll be easier for us to have one camera here. So let's go ahead. People come and line up over here. Janet, you can come up. Okay? Steve will probably meet you there. No, I'm kidding. Okay, Shaquez is going to go first. And if you want to take the mic out of the stand and just hold on to it, you can. Okay, there you go.
You were talking about the first question, if we hear something like that, should be, did you contact the person? Did you talk to them? Is that a relational thing? Because I have the relationship with that person, and I shouldn't be asking just because it's in my field of hearing, going up to a person?
Okay. And I think that the way the lighting is, this is not going to work so good. Okay. Okay, so look, the main thing is this. It's not like if you have a problem with somebody, you have to go to them. Because it may be somebody you really can't go to, or you don't have the correct relationship with to go to them. In which case, you have the only other choice, which is to let it go. And just realize sometimes things are less than desirable. They're not the way you would like them to be, but there's really not a whole lot you can do, because without the relationship, there's nothing you're going to do except possibly throw gasoline on the fire. Okay? So I want to be clear, that's a great question. It's not like you have to go to, but I'm talking about when I watch and read and see people's interactions in their posts and their Facebook and everything else. These are situations where they absolutely should and could go to somebody, but they don't. But, you may have a problem with somebody that you just can't. You don't know them well enough. In which case, maybe you talk to me or one of the other leadership, ministry people to help you process what you really can't truly get your, satisfaction out of, where you can feel like you handled it. If you're suffering from the negative side of the color personality blue, you're going to, listen, I'm not picking on that, but you have to realize that you're not always going to get your pound of flesh or your justice, okay? The blues really are all about justice. That's not right, I need justice. But you can't always get that. Now, he won't be mocked. There will be justice, but you don't necessarily get to have it while you're paying attention and seeing what's going on. People will reap what they sow. And so if they did something they shouldn't do, there will be a consequence. Maybe not immediately. Praise Yah, we don't get immediate consequences most of the time. Gives us time to fix things. But you need to get to the place where if it's somebody you could and should go to, and if you're not sure, talk to me. Talk to one of the leaders and find out, is that somebody I should go to? Do I need to handle this? Or it may just be one of those things where you just let it go. There are those out there, and you're probably watching now because, you guys are funny. You're angry, you hate what I do, and you watch every week. I say, why do you keep watching? And then they send nasty emails and things like that about everything I do every week. Look, first of all, I don't normally read these things. If they're brought to my attention, you get all angry because I don't respond to them. I'm not going to respond to something that I feel has a very little chance of having a positive result. Okay, so embrace the red side of the personality, which is looking at always results. And ask yourself, if I do this, what is the likely result? Will I get, because you're thinking, I'll go to that person and I'll just straighten them right out and everything. Well, that's what you're thinking. But now think about who you're going to and whether that's likely to happen. Because you should know, if you really get your own emotion out of the way, what is likely, especially the more of a relationship you have with someone, the better you know them, the more you know exactly how they're going to respond. And so you shouldn't be surprised, because they'll come to me and go, well, I went to my sister and I said blah, 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 and then boom. I say, that surprised you? You call this person your sister, like you know each other well. Why would that surprise you? Okay? You should know exactly. Husbands and wives, this is the same thing all the time. He does this or she does that, and they all act surprised. What are you surprised? You've been married for 30 years, and now you're surprised. Has this ever happened before? 105,000 times. So why you act surprised? But you do, because each time you're thinking, oh, surely this time it won't happen again. All right? But we don't think before we do. And I've been talking a lot about creating that space between the event and the response to the event, where you can ask those questions in your own head. Hey, if I respond in this way, what is the most likely honest, not subjectively, but objectively, what is the most likely response the other person will give? Because you're thinking, I'm going to go to them and they're just going to repent and apologize, and that's not always going to happen. Sometimes maybe. But you should know the likelihood of how that's going to go. And so I've had people call me coward and get all mad at me because they'll text me and send all these nasty things, and then I just ignore them. And they're thinking that I'm angry or acting no, I just don't see any point to responding. I'm not like mad. I'm like, well, I'm just going to ignore you. I'm just like, I can't think of something that would actually be positive in their response to whatever I say, so I just don't bother. You understand what I'm saying? And some of you have a hard time that is actually an option, to not respond. But that's still a response. And so, I have, now of course, for my own emotions, I'm thinking of, the things I want to say. And then I don't ever actually type it out. For some of you, because I don't like to type, I don't like to write, I don't like to do those things. But for some of you who like to do those things, you know what? Type it, write it out. Don't do it in an email or a text where you might accidentally hit send. Just write it somewhere so that you can get it out of your system and then throw it out. Or hold on to it for future use. But if you need to get it out of your system and you feel like you need to type it out or write it out, fine, so do it. Just don't do it where you could accidentally send it. Because some people have done that, haven't you? Anybody ever do that? You typed a bunch of stuff and it's like, oh no, I hit send. Okay? You can't unsend it. Okay, but so that's a great question, though, because, yes, you should go to those that you should go to. Others, you should just decide to let it go. Let Abba work with them. Okay? Now, if it's the second category, where you're not going to respond, you're not going to go to the person, you're going to let it go, then you have to also then realize if you continue to interact the same way with that person, it's likely to continue to happen. You may want to, at least temporarily, adjust the level of interaction so that you don't continuously put yourself in a place that can be triggered and really cause a problem for you. I'm not saying cut them off, but you may want to be more clear about your boundaries with that person, okay? Create some layers. I mean, you may need a very small boundary for something that's minimal. You may need a real strong boundary for something that was bigger. But just, understand that you need to do those things. And again, if you don't have any idea what I'm talking about, you can come and get counsel. We can talk about how to do that. All right? Good?
Perfect.
All right, you're welcome.
Thank you, Rabbi.
Okay. Janet?
Rabbi, thank you so much.
You're welcome.
I've been listening to your forgiveness teaching, and I actually mentioned that to you in Torah study. And there's two things. You always say just an idea can change the course, right, of your whatever happens in your future. So two ideas, awesome ideas that I got from that, which was what you just said, create a space to resolve, forgive, let go, right? Which is very important because I think that if you want to repair or reconcile with that person, you want to come to in a place where you're at peace with what happened and to receive and to reconcile. So a lot of people may need a little bit extra time to get there. But the other thing that I got from you was what Yeshua prayed when he was in the cross, Father, forgive them, for they don't know what they're doing. And that's what you taught us, right? Okay. And you always teach us that the thing is, you don't know, right? But he does, because he can see everything, we don't. So I think that compassion is important. And my question is, I have two questions. One is, why is it easier to go through that process with people that are a little bit farther than you, but when they're close to you, like, your immediate ones, yes, your husband, your wife, whatever. Why is it a little bit more difficult to do that?
All right, so why?
Because there is more emotional investment, I guess, in the relationship. There's a closer connection, and
Right, so it affects you in a deeper way. All right, so you answered your own question. Look, I mean, first of all, when we're dealing with Yeshua saying, Father, forgive them, they don't know what they're doing. I'm going to reword that for you, because that's true, but it's not true. And I'm not saying Yeshua didn't say something true, but you're missing half of it. They absolutely knew exactly what they were doing, but because they had all the wrong context, they didn't realize how wrong it was. They thought they were eliminating a challenge, a problem, a rebel, a heretic. In other words, so they knew exactly what they were doing. What they didn't know is they had no idea what they were really doing. Do you understand what I'm saying? So realize that when you're dealing with the people in your life, and you should be able to say things, Father, forgive them, they don't know what they're doing. In other words, if they truly understood, they would know better. But they don't. They're filtering it through. They think they're right. They think they're responding appropriately to something. They may have jumped to some wrong conclusion, and based on that conclusion, they're now convinced they're right about something. So it's not that they don't know what they're doing. They're doing it based on inaccurate or false information. And then if their information was right, then maybe the reaction would be more correct. Okay? But they're doing it, because remember, Scripture tells you how to deal with false prophets. Yeshua just wasn't one of them. Okay? And so it wasn't just totally wrong what they were doing in all aspects. But they had no idea that they were dealing with Mashiach. So that's why if you forgive them, they don't know what they're doing. They have no idea that they're killing Messiah. All right? And so use that with the people you interact with. Use that with the people that you're struggling with to say, you know what, first of all, you should always be able to say, Father, forgive them. Because if they truly understood that they were hurting my feelings and they have a relationship with me, they probably wouldn't do it, but they're not thinking about that. They're acting most likely out of their own pain. They're not thinking about you. Look, the worst aspect or challenge of us in the below is selfishness. And by selfishness, I mean that everything is about me. That thought. Not selfish meaning we're not generous to give to people. But even when we give to people, it's about you, because you feel good when you give to them, and you want people to know you gave them. Somehow it still becomes about you. Okay? It really does. And you want people to know how generous you are. And it's not that you're pridefully doing this. It's just because it makes you feel good when you do these things. It's still about you. Because you wouldn't just do it if it didn't feel good to you. And so that's the selfish problem. And so when a person is giving you all kinds of grief and attacks and this and that, and you understand that they're doing it out of false premises and false information, it's coming out of something that was about them that shouldn't have been about them. But because it was about them, all of this, and then you respond back because now it became about you. All right? And yet, and here's the funny part, because we all see the world so differently, right, through our filters. If I'm having a problem with Janet, all right, well, let's say Olivia and Janet, so we'll do the husband and the wife. So let's say they're having a problem, and it's very hard, though, for Janet, when she's listening to Olivia and dealing with him, to understand what pain she may have caused him and where the hurt is, and it's hard for him looking at her, because he's looking at her, they're each looking at each other like, well, I don't understand why you're upset. You did this to me. And the other one's like, well, I don't understand why you're upset. You did this to me. Because you're not able to relate to the other person's thing if it's not something that would have bothered you. But it bothered them, or it offended them, or it hurt their feelings, or whatever it did. Okay? It caused some sort of pain level. But because you don't think it should have, you can't relate and accept that there's a reason for them to be upset. Okay? And so that's part of it. The other part of it, then you take that to the other question you had, which is, if I barely know you, there's not as much emotional, relational involvement, so your level of ability to hurt me is diminished to almost nothing. The less I know you, the less I really can be hurt. So somebody I've never heard of, who I don't know at all, wants to put some negative comment on one of these videos, I'm not happy they did that, because it can discourage others who are not mature enough to know how to read comments properly. And by read comments properly, I mean like you should not be influenced by a comment. You should be influenced by whatever the video actually said or did. Okay, you watched the video and you either liked it or didn't, appreciated it or didn't, got anything out of it or not. And whatever comment that's there is, so I don't even know why anybody reads them. I never read them. I only know about them when people point them out to me. Okay? And so, so that's why my wife can cause the largest emotional problem. Then my children, see, as we tear out from the inner circle and to the people then the people in the congregation, and maybe someone who visited once, and then to somebody who I never even heard of, it's less and less potentially powerful and hurting because there's less and less relationship and connection. Okay?
Can I have one more question?
Sure.
It's about the tithing. It's actually a comment and a question too. So, yes, you were mentioning like a lot of us were tithing when we were in the Christian church, and that was our case, Olivia and I. And we always saw blessing from it. But we were not in the Torah. But I don't know if that's possible to receive a blessing even if you're not walking fully in Torah. But even now, we only were doing one tithe, but we learned about the 3 tithe. And this year we're doing the 3rd tithe. And it's been amazing how he has provided in a way that we weren't even expecting. And it's just, it's not a big deal to do the 3rd tithe at all. It's just, and the 2nd tithe is the one that I love the most because we really get to do the things that we can like to do with that money, right? Yeah. It's just awesome. And so, but I wanted to ask you though, what is that, do you think there is blessing even if you don't know fully the Torah? Thank you.
Okay. Let me address 2 things that you said. Let me start with the second thing first, which is, some of you have always wanted to know, because you were raised relatively poor, you've lived a life that was pretty tight financially almost your whole life, and wanted to know what would it feel like to have abundance? Wouldn't it be nice to be the one at the restaurant saying, hey, I got this, and take everybody out? Wouldn't it be nice to just buy some gifts for some people, or whatever it is? There's things that can make you feel abundant. And Abba gives you that through the 2nd tithe. So that, because I watch people when I've gone out with 10, 12 people at a dinner during a holy day, and like during the week of unleavened bread or the week of Sukkot, and they'll just pick up the tab for everybody because they had the tithe to do that, and they got the joy of saying, hey, let me bless everybody, and of course sometimes people get frustrated because they wanted to do it and someone got there first, and I've seen that, but if you ever wanted to know what it feels like to be the one that could say, hey, I'd like to take you out, because some of you, and this is the weirdest thing, not in this room, but it always cracks me up that if I go out with people, how often they expect me to take care of them. And I'm the ministry person. But if I say, hey, would you like to join us? We're all going out to dinner. They automatically think I'm paying for it. And I don't think I ever would have had that thought when I was sitting where you are and I wasn't the one in front of the mic, but it's incredible. Now, it's not that I expect people to pay for me. I don't need anybody to do that. I appreciate when people do. And when I appreciate it, it's not because I need them to do it. I appreciate that it blesses them to do it. Okay? Because I don't need that. But I know it's a blessing to them that they're saying, here, I want to show you my appreciation for you because I want to take care of this bill. I want to pay for this meal. But Abba gives you the 2nd tithe so that you, at least a few times a year, while you may not be in abundance, can at least live like you have abundance for those periods of time if you were to tithe. Okay, so that's first of all. Second of all, I think there are things that Abba put in place. Well, I don't know. I'm going to say this differently. There absolutely are things Abba put in place that work just because they work. Okay? If I take my pen and I drop it, guess what? It's going to fall. You don't have to believe in it. You don't have to believe in Torah. You don't have to believe in Yahweh. That pen, I'm going to let go. It's not going to float up. Okay? You're going to spend your time eating nothing but sugar and junk. You're going to gain weight. It's not because you broke a Torah law. Okay? But they're just things that they work because they work. And I think that tithing is the same thing. Because I have read and studied about as much as you can read and study on success, on business success, financial success, personal development. And there's an incredible amount of works out there where one of the things they teach for success is tithing. All the richest ones out there base it on taking that 10% and giving it away. Now, they didn't necessarily say where to give it, but just giving 10% away, so that you're not just taking it all for yourself, all right? And so there seems to be certain things that we would call universal laws, like physics, chemistry, biology, right? So there's some universal things. And I think that when you do the mechanics of some of the Torah commands, everybody benefits from them if you do them, whether you believe or not, because it's one of those type of things. And I think tithing is one of those things, okay? So hopefully that answered Janet's question with that, okay? Janet, was that good? Okay. So don't be surprised that wherever somebody starts doing it, it has the positive effect. Because it's a mindset of away from yourself that brings, okay, think about, I've said this I think a lot, but I want to just re-say it here. We're not end points for abundance. And so if you become like a clogged, sink where the water no longer goes down and you can't keep putting more in because it's clogged. But as long as it's unclogged, you can pour that faucet on and let it run all day long, all week long. It's keep running. You add as much water as you want. It can keep running, keep running, keep running. But if you become that clogged end point, Abba's not going to give you more abundance because it's stuck. You created a clogged jam in your life. And so if you are mechanically at least giving it somewhere, and I'm not saying that you should do that with your tithe, but I'm saying, but those who don't know, they're at least understanding that the abundance is a flow-through process. You get to keep a chunk of it, but the rest of it's supposed to flow through. And so I think that that's where it works as far as universally for people, okay? Because we were designed to be a flow-through point for these things. And as long as we act that way, we're acting in compliance with how he designed us, whether we get it or not. And so the blessing comes. Okay, Steve?
All right, I wanted to talk about the tithing. This is my 7th year tithing to MTOI, Rabbi, and them. So
You got to keep it right up here.
I know what it's like to do all 3 tithes, and I'll tell you what, there's not been one time that I've not had what I needed. In fact, just recently, I was 2 days to finish a job with not another project for whatever reason at this time. And then a girl called me, and it was, 3 times what I just finished. So, and I think that Abba always blesses me in his timing because I've always managed to do the tithe.
Amen. And look, let me just tell you about Steve. When Steve first contacted us and started doing the tithing, and he asked a lot of questions to make sure how to do it, he called me a couple of times just blown away. He didn't understand. He's like, I've never been this busy with my business. He does contract work. And he couldn't believe the size of the checks he was getting every month. But he started to understand. And so you couldn't force him not to tithe, okay? But you're thinking, oh, well, that worked for him. What do you mean, oh, that worked for him? Why wouldn't it work for you? Yahweh didn't say this, this will only work for Steve, But then again, I can probably point out at least 15 of you in here that could give the same story, that you didn't understand when you did the first one that it'd be okay. Then the second one, then, oh, my gosh, the third one? Steve's gone through the third one twice now, okay? And his business has just kept going. Abba gives you what you need. And some of you are thinking, yeah, but he's got business, so then he can get more business. I just have a regular job. Listen, I've seen somehow, some way, things work out even when you have a regular job. I don't know why it works. I don't care, but it does. Either something will fix in your expenses, or you get a bonus, or it just works. It just does. And some of you are nodding your head and you go, yeah, I get it, all right? But you have to go out there and put him to the test and see if he doesn't just give you that overflowing, shaken, and just press down. But you're not going to know until you do it, will you? And by the way, just to make sure that you're getting it, he's not going to have it all happen instantaneously either. You're going to have to do it for a little bit. The more you trust him, the more it may happen quickly. The more you're really skeptical, the more he's going to test you to see how patient you are to see if it comes. Well, I've been doing it now for 3 weeks, and I have, well, listen, that's only 3 weeks. Okay? You got to be patient. Brianna, Hey, darling.
Hi. So this is my first year tithing and the first time talking at a Midrash. So I have these thoughts that I wrote down when you were talking about tithing, and hopefully they make sense or are correct. So if you think about tithing as just an action or just giving your money away, it's almost looking at circumcision like just circumcising your flesh, which is the action. But you have to circumcise your heart. That's part of it. If you don't circumcise your heart, the flesh had nothing to do with it. So you're still fleshly. Or if you're fasting on Yom Kippur and you're doing it just thinking about how many hours are left till you have to fast, you're doing it for the wrong reasons. Or Shabbat, you think about the time you're losing, you won't gain anything. So with tithing, if you're just doing the actions, they become meaningless without having his mind in you, which is having that right mindset and thinking about why you're doing it. And that would be a fleshly mindset, correct?
Amen. Amen.
And seeing it as something you want to do, not seeing it as something you have to do.
Amen. That's my girl. Look, and it's really funny because she just started working, and the way we do things today is paperless pretty much. So she has to come to me, and she says, because she really is excited about tithing, so she makes sure she asks me, hey, this is what my check was, how do I do this and everything. But it went direct deposited into the bank. So she always asks me for the cash, and then I transfer it from her account to my account. So because she hasn't quite figured out ATMs and getting money out of the bank yet, So I get to help her with this, and we just sort of transfer things back and forth because, we used to get a paycheck and cash it, and we'd have cash. Or she would have check to write, but she didn't have checks yet with her account. But I get to interact with her, and it's not like I go to her. She comes to me. And she says, I just got paid. I want to make sure, am I calculating this right? And by the way, can you give me some cash and transfer the money so I can do this, Because we've gone so paperless, so she doesn't have that. And I only keep cash on me for things like somebody needs change or something like this comes up, because I don't usually spend cash either, like most of us don't, right? But, you probably should keep just a little bit on you for those rare times when you might need it. But I'm very proud of her because she's thinking this through and not just doing it mechanically. And by the way, it's not because I've insisted that my children do these things. They've got to get to the place where they get it and they want to do it. And so that's why I really appreciate that she, came up and made the comment she did, because now you get to hear where that is coming from her. Did you have a comment for that?
I have two tithing questions.
Okay, good. Let's go to those, and then we'll go to you in a second.
Kelly Lutz. All right. In regards to tithing, I'm a stay-at-home mom and have no income. My husband does not feel the need to tithe. Should I be getting a job to be able to tithe? I'm willing to do that if Rabbi says so.
All right, look. The tithing thing is complicated for those that are not like just basically in business or employed. And it's complicated because we're not really understanding tithing, okay? There's two things that we do in terms of financial interaction with our Creator. We have the tithe and we have the offering. Hamaaser and hatruma, okay? The maaser is the tithe, the truma is the offering. Tithing is only a 10% of lucratively generated funds. You made an effort to produce a yield, an increase. That can be through employment, through a business, through investment. An effort was made to generate an increase. So you're not required to make an increase so you can tithe. You're told that if you have the increase, you have to tithe. All right? So no, if you're a housewife at home or a stay-at-home dad or whatever it is, or you're not working, there's nothing to tithe. But you're not missing out on something because you're not tithing. You're just not doing anything that's tithable. Now, you can make an offering if somehow you have some funds that come your way. Look, there's another way that people end up with funds, which is the government benevolence of disability or Social Security and those kind of things. Those kind of benefits we get, those are benevolent benefits, right, that we get. Those are not lucratively generated funds. Now, Because Social Security is actually SSI, it's an insurance program, right? Social Security insurance. And so you're receiving the benefit of that insurance. So that's not something you tithe. And that's not to say if you have more than you need, you can't make an offering. Because offerings are an expression, okay, let's go back to tithing first. Tithing is an obedience to say the first of my everything, the first 10%, putting him first goes first. The 10% is his. It wasn't mine to begin with. 10% always belonged to him. Then we have offerings, which are an expression of how much you appreciate his abundant blessings. And we taught that in the teaching on tithing, right? Okay? So the offerings are an expression of, and he tells you 3 times a year, and by the way, this is Shavuot weekend, so on Monday, make sure that we didn't come empty-handed. You should come with something. Deuteronomy 16:17. And you do not come empty-handed. But with an offering that expresses how much you appreciate since the last feast, really. It's like from feast to feast, how much he's blessed you. And not necessarily just in terms of your finances, just you're showing him, I appreciate your blessings. Okay, and we express that through an offering. I mean, there's nothing really you can give him, but sacrificing something that would be yours that you're no longer going to have because you give it to him, this expresses how much you appreciate him. So for this lady asking the question, and we do have other people that are retired or on disability, look, if you're getting a large retirement from a business that you invested in or you had your own 401k, whatever, so you put a bunch of money into something and it yielded you can tithe on the increase. You don't have to tithe on the whole thing unless you didn't tithe on it before it went in. Okay, but you should have tithed on whatever you had come in at the gross amount before you divided it out into a retirement accounts and everything else. Okay? But on the increase, so let's say you put $10,000 into something in retirement and then it ends up being $15,000. Well, then you got a $5,000 increase. Okay? Some of you are going to get a tax refund, or if you already did. Tax refunds, you should have tithed on it before the government took the taxes. That way there's nothing to tithe on when you get the refund. Okay? Because you should have tithed on it when you got paid. Okay? Before the taxes. All right. So hopefully that answered that question for that lady. What else you got? Another one?
You answered both questions in one shot.
Okay, good. Okay? So, I mean, because look, this is, I know, a challenge for people. Okay, some things Abba says, you have to understand whether or not they apply to you. There are, there's a whole bunch of instructions just for priests. So unless there's a temple and you're a priest, they don't apply to you. There's a lot of questions just for the ladies. So if you're a guy, it doesn't apply to you. There's some that are just for the men. So if you're a lady, it doesn't apply to you. Okay? There are some instructions that just don't apply because the parameters are not there. So tithing is the same thing. If you're not generating lucrative funds, if you're not there's no increase coming from effort. Okay? Investing is still an effort. You had to choose the place to put it and invest it. Now, it's not a whole lot of effort because once it's there, it's doing all the rest of the work. But you made an effort to generate an increase. And that increase is tithable. Okay, so hopefully that clarified that for everybody. I used to argue we have a bunch of people that, because they really want to, do what they can there. It's funny how I've got broke people that are more arguing to tithe and do things than people with plenty of money who don't want to do it at all. And I have to tell them, make an offering, it's not a tithe. Well, so they give 10%. I said, good, it's a 10% offering. Okay? All right? Because they're on disability or they're on Social Security, but they want to give. I said, fine, so give, but I just want you to know technically it's not a tithe because you didn't generate this through lucrative effort, okay? All right, just so we're clear on that. Okay, Ashley. And then if you get a bunch more on there, just raise your hand. And you got 7 of them? Okay, so after Ashley, we'll get a bunch from you.
Hi, Rabbi. First of all, I want to say to Brianna, if I may, she is so lucky to have you as a dad. She's way beyond my years. She's 16, and I'm 35, and I'm just sitting here going, oh, boy. I have 2 questions. One on the tithing.
Okay, wait. I only want to take partial credit for that. Look, she had this in her. Okay, just remember, I don't want people thinking I grabbed a hold of her and said, now that you're working, you have to do this, you have to do that. She's heard the teaching, she knows what we do. She chose to do it, not because I made her do it, okay? And that's the thing that we have to understand. Okay, so for parents with your children, yes, teach them about tithing, instruct them and guide them. I wouldn't force them. You're not going to force my children ever to keep Torah. Torah is something that they have to have a personal relationship to do. I will teach them that as long as they're in my house, things that break Torah can't be done in my house. Okay? But I'm not going to force them to observe what they don't have that relationship with. And that's something you should need, because forcing them doesn't actually benefit anybody. You think it does, but it doesn't. Now, I'm not talking about your 5-year-old and your 8-year-old, but I'm talking about your teenagers who actually will argue with you and have attitude and everything else. Okay? You know, I talk to my children, I say, look, whether he's popped your bubble yet and connected with you personally yet is irrelevant to me at this point. What matters is that you, out of respect for me and where I am in my walk, respect that when you come to services, you behave appropriately. And you will come to services, at least till you're 18, when you can make your own decisions. Or 20 if we're going to go with the biblical age. And you will come with me, and you're going to, whether you get it or not, out of respect for me, not respect for him if you don't have that yet. Out of respect for me as your father, you're going to behave appropriately. All right? Same thing with my house. If you don't understand and don't agree, because some of you have teenagers who don't get this stuff, that's fine, they don't get it. But they still need to have appropriate music, appropriate activities, appropriate things done in your house on Shabbat, because it's your house. And you have to explain that that's why they're doing it, not because of some belief in a system they don't believe in or a creator they don't believe in, but out of respect for you. And you can say, look, otherwise, you know, the clock is ticking to 18 or whatever, and there's a door, and you can go out and do whatever you want. But while you're getting the benefits of living in this house, food, shelter, clothing, and all the other wonderful things you give them, then their responsibility for receiving all that is to treat your house with respect for you as the authority in the house. Does that make sense to everyone? Okay? And look, and that's very common. Understand, most of your children, like you, did not get called from the womb, okay? And they're going to have their personal revelation from above and get their bubble popped at some point. And you can't speed it up just because yours was popped already. That's irrelevant, okay? But what you can do is build enough of a relationship where they will respectfully honor what you want because of their relationship with you. Hopefully you understood that, okay? And that's it. So don't, if your child, and this is important, I guess, to really throw this out there now. If your child does not have a vertical relationship, do not throw in their face that whatever they're doing is against Torah, against Scripture, against this, because they don't care. They're not getting that anyway. What you say is, I love you. I want to provide what I provide for you in my house, and while you're in my house, I would really appreciate that you respect that this is what we do in this house. And if that's not going to work, then you're going to have to find a way to be outside this house. You see the difference? You can't use scriptural argument with someone who doesn't get it. And just because they're your children, you raise them, this doesn't mean they get it. I'm just dealing with the truth here. You either want the truth, you don't want the truth. That's reality, right? We talk about we are going to live in reality. Reality is, if you got 5 kids, probably most of them don't get it. Maybe one does, maybe more, but the majority don't get it. And that's not your fault. You didn't raise them badly necessarily. I mean, you could raise them horribly and one might still get it. It's between them and him, not between you and them. Now, how they act in your house is between you and them. Where you say, look, out of respect for me, I love you and I'm your dad, you respect me, this is what goes on in my house. And that my children know that, okay? And to a lesser or greater degree, they're connected. Obviously, my daughter's very connected. And she was one of those rare ones. She was connected from the beginning. I didn't do anything for that, okay? I nurtured it, but that's just what she had, okay? My son, not as much, but he shows a lot of respect, okay? He understands that when he comes here, he's my son, it's my place, it's what I do, this is my belief, and he tries, as much as a teenager tries, you know, to be respectful. And so that's appreciated. So I just wanted to throw that out there for you parents that may think, what am I doing wrong? My children aren't, you're not doing anything wrong, okay? I'm not saying you're not doing anything wrong as a parent, period, but that's not why they're where they are. That is a personal, interaction. None comes unless the Father personally opens their eyes and their ears, etc. Okay? Don't ever forget that. All right? Because your children, as they go through journeys, are going to go like you did. They're going to get, atheistic and agnostic and communist and socialist and capitalist and fascist and, they're going to look in different belief systems or no belief. They're going to do whatever you did too. They're exposed to everything out there, and some of them are going to be interested in all those variety of things. Some of them won't. It has to do with their relationship vertically. It has nothing to do with you. Okay? Just so you understand that. All right, Ashley.
I have two questions. One, as you know of our situation being on disability and SSI, why is it, and I do tithe with the 10%, and that goes into my question is, why do I have guilt if I don't tithe, even though I am not biblically commanded to in a way?
Well, it's not so much that. Okay, first of all, because you're embracing a rule that doesn't apply to you. But if you feel like you need to give, just in your mind, just call it an offering. And your offering can still be 10%, but it's an offering. And it's your expression of your appreciation that he's given you more than you need. Okay? So it's an expression of that appreciation. Tithing is just, it's like the arguments that were out there about, gay people being married. Well, marriage has a very specific term. It's between a man and a woman. It's an actual term. Tithing's an actual term. It means 10% of lucrative increase. So if it doesn't apply, it doesn't apply to you. But if you feel like you want to give, there's another thing he also commands us to do, which is to make offerings. So be excited that you're making an offering, and if you want to make it 10%, you can, okay? But it's an offering.
To bounce off of that, and sorry, this is not my second question, but to bounce off of that, is there a tithing for time?
Listen, tithing, as I talk about it, is learning to put him first in all aspects of your life. He should get the first 10% of your love, your attention, your time. See, we should be making sure we're giving him before we make. So we always try to see if we can fit him in after all of our other stuff instead of making him important to be prioritized first. Okay? Which is why you should take the 10% off your paycheck first before you pay your bills, before you do anything else, so that you don't think, oh, look, I've got $400. No, you don't. You've got $360. Don't think you have 400. Take the 10% right off. Don't even think about it. It's like it was never there. It's not yours. Okay? Because some of you are paying your bills first and they're struggling because you can't tithe. Well, because you're doing it backwards. Adjust your living to match what you actually have, which is 90%. Which I think is pretty generous of the Father to let you get 90%. Okay? Yeah, you can clap for that. Okay?
And my last question is, and it's a bit of a topic changer, so forgive me. I've learned that in this feast, a lot of people come up to me and in Pesach saying that I'm an inspiration. Even, Rocky, who's one of my big inspirations, came up to me and said, I'm an inspiration to him. And how do I get over of a feeling, and I don't have a word for it, but it's like, I feel funny when people say that, and how do I embrace something like that and say thank you instead of saying I'm not an inspiration to people?
All right. So this is a good question, and it goes back to what I talked about earlier. You're only thinking about you, okay? If I come to you and say you inspired me, it had nothing to do with how you feel about that or what you think you did. Something you did inspired me. I was inspired. I chose to see whatever you did, and I chose to be inspired by it. So it has nothing to do with you and how you feel about you and how you feel about whatever I thought was inspiring. But you can say, thank you. I'm glad that whatever I did was inspiring to you. Even if you don't see it and don't get it, it's not the point. He was inspired. And so someone who says that to you, think of them, not you. Say, wow. Whatever I did, somebody's benefiting from it. Even if I don't get it or understand why, but they're benefiting from it. Okay?
So that's another fake it until you make it kind of thing.
Well, it's, yeah, fake it until you make it, but you're missing the point. It's not fake it until you make it. You never have to agree with it. What you have to agree with is that they were inspired.
Okay.
It doesn't matter if you don't feel inspiring and you don't understand why they were inspired. You have to accept the reality that that person, look, it's like going up to somebody, you know, it was almost like a joke. When I first was with my wife, I would tell her I love you, and she would say, how come? And it was a joke, and we were just having fun with that, right? But the thing was, because she wanted me to tell her all these wonderful things why I loved her. But the point is, she had to first know that I feel this way. Whether you understand it or not, it's not the point. So if someone comes to you and says, you're an inspiration, you can ask them, wow, that's great, I'm glad. What did I do that was inspiring? And maybe you could start to learn to feel better about yourself. But don't argue with it. This is reality, right? They felt inspired, no matter how much you thought otherwise, okay? Okay? See, because otherwise you're filtering it through you, right? You're saying, I'm not inspiring. I'm a lowly piece of whatever, right? And I don't understand why anybody. But they're telling you something because it's real for them. For whatever reason, they were moved, inspired, whatever word it was. And they come and share that with you because they want you to feel appreciated for how much they appreciate whatever it was. And so all you have to do is say, wow, I didn't realize I would ever do anything that would inspire anybody. Thank you. You know, praise Yah that I did something that inspired somebody. Okay, I know we had a bunch on the live stream, so let me try to get some of those, Bill, and then we may run out of time. So just hang out there for a second, but go ahead, Kurt.
All right. This goes back to an earlier discussion. It says, shouldn't correction come with definition as the other person can fully understand what they're doing wrong?
Yes and no, okay? And the reason I say yes and no is like, look, if you're correcting somebody, it is ideal if you could walk over to them and correct them and explain to them what they did wrong and make sure there's a connection between the correction. As a matter of fact, I've told you guys the stories how when my children were little, I would, after punishing them, I would go into the room, sit on the rocking chair, pick them up, sit them on my lap. They were like, 5, 6 years old. Have them look me in the eye, and I would say, okay, do you understand why you're here? And so I wanted to see if they understood. And if they didn't, I would explain. But I wanted to make sure they understood what the correction was for. Now, the reason I said yes and no is because Abba will correct us or put us through trials and challenges and expect us to figure it out. So he doesn't actually tell you sometimes why you're in trouble or why you're having a problem. Now, often he will inspire a ministry person if you go to them and ask to come up with the interpretation and dig through and say, well, maybe this, and this is the reason you're going through this right now, because Abba's trying to get your attention. And the ministry person may only figure that out by asking you lots of questions. Well, what's been going on lately? What's been the situation? And then we go, oh, maybe. And the answer is always should be maybe, and not like those, I don't know, the people in Christianity don't want to speak into your lives. Well, this is because, no, we don't know. Maybe. Maybe it's because of this, and this, he's trying to get your attention. And then if you correct that thing, and the situation corrects, then it's likely that was the problem. Likely. It may not have been. It may just been that other things all played out. Look, some of the things you go through may be just time and chance. Stuff happens. That's reality. Solomon taught us that. Time and chance happen to everybody. Okay? So hopefully that answers that question. Next.
How do we know the amount of Shavuot offering? Is there a guideline?
It says that it's how your heart is moved. And basically, since we do this 3 times a year, you should be looking at what Abba's done with you in the time frame since the last one. So unleavened bread, Shavuot, and Sukkot are the 3 times. So at Shavuot, you should be thinking, okay, so in the last 50 days or so since unleavened bread, what blessings have I received and how much do I appreciate that? Okay? And then let your heart be moved. I would say that more often than not, the first number that pops in your head is the right one. Problem is, sometimes that number is a scary number and you don't want to do it and you edit. Because it scares you. Maybe you're thinking, well, the first number comes into your head maybe like, say, $100 or $50. And then you think, no, that's a lot of money. You want to bring it down to 10 or 20. And that's fine. I'm just saying is usually if you're praying and wanting to know, whatever the first thing is put in your head is usually probably the right answer. Does anybody agree with me? Do you understand what I'm talking about? And isn't it often, though, after you think about it, you go, whoa, 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 that's a pretty big number? Okay? But it's almost always go with that. I just, personally, the first number that pops in my head is the one that I usually try to go with because I'm asking him, I'm trying to figure it out, I'm trying to appreciate and think about where that's going to be, and I usually just go with the first one that comes in my head. Okay, that doesn't mean you have to do it that way, but you're asking me for some guidelines. But remember, it's read Deuteronomy 16 and 17. Here, I'll just read you the last part of the verse here. Okay. It says, but each one with a gift in his hands, verse 17, according to the blessing of Yahweh your Elohim, which he has given you. That's all he says. So you need to decide what dollar amount to put on the blessing you've received. It could be the widow's mite, which is a huge amount for her, okay? Whatever it is, it's your heart move to whatever you need to do. I can't give you a guideline amount, okay? What I can do is this. This will maybe help a lot of you. How about planning for this in advance? So that means as you are blessed, you should have a little, a lot of the Jews have what's called a tzedakah box in their house. Okay? It's a box that you get, like an offering box, a little box, and tzedakah means charity. And as things happen in their lives, they walk over and they put something in the box so that when they get to these days, like the offerings, they have something to bring. Okay? As a matter of fact, they won't pray. We're not talking about the normal Siddur, pre-written prayers, but if they're going to go and beseech their Creator for anything, they won't go without putting money in the box first. Not to buy him or purchase the prayer, but to show an expression of their desire to give to others. Remember, because that money in the box is going to some sort of charitable, back to the ministry type of thing, that before I ask for something, I should be willing to give something. Before I ask for a blessing, I want to bless. So you may want to think about, having a box. And when you want to go before the Father and ask for stuff, maybe you want to put something in the box that later you will be giving to show that appreciation so it'll bless others. But if you plan for this, by meaning as your life is blessed between feasts, you will have already funds put aside for this. Instead of sitting there going, well, the budget's kind of tight. I just got to Shavuot and I'd like to give an offering, but I'm kind of broke. But you didn't put anything aside for it. And this doesn't come out of your second tithe. This is an offering separate and above from that. Okay? This is an expression of your appreciation. And so you put that aside. Hopefully that helped. Kurt? Yeah, you can clap for that.
All right. Did Yeshua keep Shabbat while in the 40-day fast? And was it in the form of a gathering together?
I'll have to go back and check the videotape. Look, he always kept Shabbat. There's nothing wrong with fasting on Shabbat. So I'm sure during those 40 days he kept Shabbat. Okay? And what was the second part of the question?
Did he do?
We're having a problem with that, Mike.
Did he do it? Did he do it in a group? Or was he by himself?
Well, the 40 days he went off by himself. So that he did by himself.
Okay. Next question. Is Shavuot also about emptying yourself like you've been teaching in love and Torah so we can receive whatever Father has so that we become people he wants to live with forever?
Correct.
Okay. And then how do these two verses work together? It's got Romans 4:2 and James 2:21.
Romans
4:2.
I got the one in James already. I need the Romans one. Okay. Okay, so now this question is dealing with the whole idea of works. Listen to the are you saved, the relationship between salvation, faith, and works. Okay, that's covered. The volunteer fire department's right behind our building here, so across the street. Okay, so you need to understand the relationship with salvation, faith, and works, and that's where that question comes from. Listen to the teaching first. If the teaching doesn't really solve your problem, then contact us again. Okay?
All right, next question. What do you do when you want to forgive someone but cannot because they refuse to acknowledge that they have wronged you?
Okay, listen to the teaching on forgiveness, reconciliation, and restoration. Okay? Forgiveness has nothing to do with the other person. Restoration and reconciliation does. So what you're really talking about is more about either restoration or reconciliation. Forgiveness is something you do even if you never get to talk. You can forgive somebody who's dead. Some of you need to. You know, a parent or somebody that before you got to interact with them, they passed away, and you did not get to have any kind of way to have that interactive closure. But you still have to forgive. But if you don't understand what it means to forgive, forgiveness is basically, to make it simple, the releasing of the negative emotional content connected to whatever was. Okay? But listen to the teaching called Forgiveness, Reconciliation, and Restoration. I think that's the name of it. All right? And that will explain that question. So if I'm having a problem with Kurt, no matter what is going on between me and him, he has to forgive me, I have to forgive him, even if we never talk to each other. So it has nothing to do with the other person acknowledging or saying I'm sorry or anything. Forgiveness has nothing to do with that. Now, we will never have reconciliation or restoration without that other part, that interaction, okay? But forgiveness must be done always by everybody. And that's about you and not the other person. That's something you do, not they do. You forgive them. They don't even need to know you did it. You have to let go of the negative emotional content connected to the other person. That's what forgiveness is, the releasing of that anger, bitterness, hatred, frustration, offense, whatever it is, you have to let that go. Oh, but they're not sorry, and then don't be reconciled or restored. Nobody said you had to go to the next level. Everybody must do step one, forgive. You may not reconcile and you may not restore. That's up to you and them and the rest, and whether the relationship can be reconciled and restored. But the problem is, very few people have ever broken it down and split it up into three things. So listen to the teaching and you should get your answer there. Okay?
All right. Michelle Perez, with grandchildren, if the mother is drug addicted, at what point should I get involved with the care of my grandson? Or should I just allow things to happen and not say or do anything? Okay, that's not something that's in our scope of authority. I mean, that sounds like a legal thing. That's more something to talk to either the police about or whoever. You need other professionals to help you know at what point you, who has a, not a direct but an indirect relationship. Grandparents are not direct relationships. You're a little bit more indirect. The parents have the only direct relationship. And so I'm not real qualified to help you with that one. All right. 2 and we're done. All right. What is the unpardonable sin?
Okay. Never mind. I was going to try to make a joke out of that. Look, the way I've always explained it is the only unpardonable sin is the sin you refuse to own. It can't be forgiven. It can't be pardoned because you don't want to own it. Okay? If you own it and repent, it can be forgiven. Okay? But you have to own it and repent. Okay, that it?
One quick tithing one. So I own a business and don't pay myself a salary. I tithe off the profit after business expenses. Am I tithing correctly?
Yes. Okay. All right. So let's see if we can get bills in real quick and then we'll end. Well, you might have to push the button on the side of the mic. If it lights up red, you're good.
Thank you, Rabbi. Quick question. Beth and I are recently retired, and we receive SSI and a military retirement. We do have investments, but those investments, we never know exactly what we've got for some time. We want to be on time when it comes to the feasts and how much to tithe. It varies as well.
Okay, again, if you don't have the lucrative clarity of lucrative income for things like second tithe, for feasts and stuff, just put aside money for these things so that you have those monies put aside. Everything else would be coming out of offerings, all right? And also for those of you that, because your situation is so challenged and you're already on benevolence like government, SSI, and those kind of things, I mean, you may need benevolent help. You need to come and contact us because we are here to do that as well. But realize if you do come to us for benevolent help, we're going to make sure you actually need it. Okay? The ministry, and Billy has said this to everybody over and over again, they usually talk to him first about things like finances, is the ministry should be your last resort. In other words, you've done everything you can do. And if you come to the ministry, we don't want to be entitling or enabling or codependent with you. So we're going to make sure to run you through a series of examinations of your finances to make sure you're actually doing all you can do. Otherwise, we're contributing to the problem and not helping you. Okay, so just realize that if you come to the ministry, you should be ready and willing to open up as to what you're doing with your money. And you shouldn't be embarrassed and afraid to do that because we want to help you, and part of that may be to point out things you're not doing that you could do that will help you. Okay, and Billy is trained in that, and I'm trained in that, so we can have, we both have gone through training programs to do that. Okay, and so we can do that, but just realize that that's it. So if you have any of those type of situations, like what Bill is talking about here, Bill Rice is talking about, is that you're going to, take what's coming in from your retirement and the government SSI and all those kind of things, and you should, like a person who tithes. I mean, you can still put 10% aside like a tither would do. It's just not necessarily using the word tithing. But you can still put it aside. So you have the money for feasts, you have the money for whatever else you need. We just won't call it a tithe, we'll call it an offering, but you are putting it aside. Okay?
Thank you, Rabbi.
All right, anything else? Because after 12:30, we need to get to lunch. You had one? Is it quick? Okay, then you got to come up here to the mic, though. Hurry up. Run! There he comes. Okay, and don't forget, we're going to be back here in 2 hours for services, but we're having a lunch that should be pretty quick, so we're good.
I would like you to help me understand something. You said you can fast on the Sabbath.
Yeah, you can fast.
I was told that the Sabbath is a feast day, and there are some people in other congregations who believe that feast days, people don't fast on a feast day.
I understand.
So
Yom Kippur is a feast day, and we fast. Okay?
okay.
Now, hold on. Now, bear in mind, though, I would not, let's be clear, I would not fast on Shabbat, because it should be a celebration and abundance and, having that kind of thing, unless I was doing an extended fast and that there's no way to get around it. Like if I'm doing something that's over a week long, well, then Shabbat's going to get included. But if I just want to do a fast for health and I want to do a 1 day, 3 day, 4 day, whatever it is, I'll make sure to do that so that the Shabbat isn't involved. Because I would like to not be fasting on Shabbat. I'd like to be thinking abundantly on Shabbat and in celebrating and feasting, etc. But if you're doing an extended fast, and some people do 10 day, 20 day, whatever they're doing, that's going to cross over a few Sabbaths or at least one Sabbath. Well, then there's no problem with that. It's part of an extended thing that you're doing. But if you're doing something, I know people say, well, I fast once a week. I fast every Shabbat. Well, fast once a week every Sunday instead or something else. Why fast on Shabbat? Okay? So, does that answer your question? All right, good. Okay? All right, so that's going to wrap it up here. Let's get one of the guys to raise their hand and close us in prayer. Okay. Let's have, where is the mic? It's all the way up here. Gary, come up here and close us in prayer. And just take the mic out because I don't think it's set to your height at the moment. All right, this is one of our shamishes, Mr. Gary Flint. Okay, and also pray then, of course, for the meal as well.
Avinu Makeno, Abba Father, we just thank you for this opportunity once again to come before you. And as we are here on Shabbat and as we prepare for your set-apart appointed time of Shavuot, Father, thank you for being here with the Mishpachah and to come and hear your word and to ask questions and have them answered. And Father, as we break for this lunch, we just want to give you praise and glory for all the things that you've given us in abundance and the power to get wealth that we can supply all these things for us in the Mishpachah. And Father, we just ask all this in the authority of Yeshua's name. Amen.
Amen. Amen. We'll see you back here in 2 hours, or a little less than 2 hours.